Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, welcome to part 3 of our first playthrough of the Viva Mexico scenario that came in with the new DLC. And in part 1, we built out a good, strong economic footprint by rapidly expanding to 5 cities and getting 4 beer meat lines running. And we built Mexico City up to over 55,000. Then we were told to take some coffee to Veracruz for this Mexican politician, and then we met this guy Stanford, I think is his name, American businessman, who said, "Don't do that. Take the stuff to Acapulco and side with me." So I think that was our case of us getting our first choice in terms of a scenario. It's the first time that's happened to us in a scenario, to my knowledge. And basically, we chose to stick with the Mexican politician. So we have gone that route, and we got new assignments, which would be to grow 4 cities down here in the south of Mexico. One's Huaca, which is near Veracruz, and then 3 down south, Belize City, Merida, and Campeche. And we fortunately had already set up beer meat lines from T-Town, what I call T-Town. It's that one right there in the middle that we're looking at right now, over to Belize City, and another beer meat line from Veracruz down to Campeche. So we're had a good start, but we got a ton of work left to do. So we're now setting up our lines. We're trying to run a line from T-Town to Merida so that Merida can get beer. That's the main thing. Remember, our beer sources for down in this end of the map are T-Town and Veracruz, our headquarters. So this is going to be a line between Merida and T-Town. I guess it's Tuxtla. See, I can't say it. So T-Town. So T-Town to Merida, and that way we'll get that beer going down. Main thing, get that beer down to Merida so it can grow. Long line, we're going to run several trains. So what we have to do now is focus on the growth of all 4 of those cities, and that it's not easy because other than, we got some logs and milk and cattle down there, but the other goods like veggies and fruit come along too late to help us with our growth, really. They only show up at the very end of the needs for these cities. And wheat is nowhere to be found. Wheat is way up north, up near Mexico City, up in that area. And way too far north to help us out, except for maybe running expensive lines. So now we're going to set up logs to get them into Merida and try to get Merida growing. And here we did a good thing. We gave it its own dedicated line. And I make that comment because I'm kind of looking ahead to what's going to happen when we do some bad things, which I'll explain so that we can all learn from them. So now we're going to start a line up from Belize City up to that area up there where we've got the logs and we've got Merida and Campeche, so that we can see we're going all the way into Merida. So we're going to have to kind of squeeze in here by that logging camp and go in and link into our line. And again, I do a good thing. I expand the station, give it a dedicated line. This is a city-to-city line between Merida and Belize City. So those textiles can get down to Belize City. That's really the main purpose, because right now the meat, Merida can get meat from Campeche right next to it, but now it can be able to send out its textiles to Belize City and help Belize City grow. Plus, this is a cool run because it kind of goes, it's a line that'll have passenger on it, and it'll run right by some pyramids. That's that area that has that gray and red striping. You can't build in there because that's a reserved area where the pyramids are. And in fact, this line gave me a little challenge because I don't know if it was the presence of those pyramids or what, but there's a section up here that I can't build in. You'll see what I mean here in a second when we scroll up. That area right in there, we can't build in that, and I couldn't come up with any way to make my second line, link up with that. So I decided, okay, and kind of cut it off and built two pieces of track with a single track that runs between them to connect them. So I just took it down roughly how far it would go before it messed up, and we're going to treat it like a pass-through. And now there really is some kind of problem here because I keep hitting accept on that build and it doesn't like it. And I don't know why. I think we got a little opportunity for improvement, maybe a little defect here. It's probably being caused because we're so close to that grayed out area, the gray and red striping where you're not allowed to build. But nevertheless, it shouldn't allow me to run that line down there and show it as green and show it as able to build. So I finally gave up and just canceled it and went back the other way and decided to build a line back the other way, and then I'll use a single line to get kind of through past those pyramids. Well, there we go. That gives us part of it, and we'll have to set signals on that part so that we have can go both ways and only one way on each side. And then we'll, like I said, we'll have a little piece of track that's bi-directional near the pyramids, and then it'll pick up and go back to this similar kind of thing on the other side so that we can run trains safely and efficiently back and forth between Merida and Belize City. So again, I think this is an opportunity for improvement for our development buddies. The other difficulty here is because that's a tight curve going into the city. Sometimes it's hard to get those curves. It's hard to get them to cooperate for you. We're going to run this down as far as we think we can and tie it off with the other line. And now basically instead of a double track all the way, it becomes two giant passing lanes with a little piece of track that is that is two directional. I wanted to put a supply tower in. I've forgotten I already had one up there that I was able to hook into. And now it won't let me go down there. Now, why can't I go down to Belize City? Oh, now I can. Oh, I know why. There are two two stations in Merida, and I picked the wrong one. I picked the one that wasn't connected this way. It was the other one is connected the other way, if you will, over to Campeche. So now we can set up our line, run some trains between the two. They can do whatever's handy. You see even a little bit of meat is going from down to Merida. So that's cool, I guess. Not the key focus. Key focus, get those textiles coming the other way. And then whatever the second industry is in Belize City, we want that, of course, to help feed. Help feed growth. Let me complete my thought there. Now, I'm obviously contemplating the nature of the universe here. And what I'm trying to figure out is, how am I going to run guns, weapons, all the way out to these other cities? Remember, we had our first part of the task with the politician was to build up those 4 cities, but we've already gotten to that part where he told us, hey, I'm going to do something about all these robberies. He's going to build up his arsenal. And it turns out that the way the arsenal is built, or the way the weapons are produced and then needed, demanded. I forgot to show you this, but I forgot to get it on the video. But basically, if you look at Mexico City, it has an arsenal in it. So that arsenal produces the weapons. So, and I figured that out by scrolling through the industry list and realizing that we can't produce weapons. We had no way of making them, in contrast to, say, for example, the Civil War campaign mission where you had that munitions factory where you could make the weapons. In this one, we don't make them. They're just in that arsenal. So that arsenal gives us kind of an infinite supply. So that's nice. We get an infinite supply of weapons. Now, in each of these 4 cities, there is, they call it a headquarters, and that's the headquarters for his militia, and they create a kind of a demand for the weapons. And you can scroll through the 4 cities and look at the goods satisfaction and see that they have a demand for weapons. So that's why we can load up weapons in Mexico City and then drop them off in these 4 cities. So here, this first one we're doing, we're going to send weapons directly to Oaxaca. Now, remember, Oaxaca isn't actually, up until now, directly connected to Mexico City. We get to Oaxaca on our network through as a connection to Veracruz and another connection to T-Town. But now it's going to have a third connection to Mexico City, and we're going to run a line straight to it, which is what we're setting up here, so that we can move weapons to Oaxaca. I contemplated putting a warehouse down there somewhere, taking all the weapons from Mexico City, run them to a warehouse, and then distributing them to the cities. And I decided no on that idea for a couple of reasons. One is, the only other reason, what would make a warehouse appealing is if we were also going to use that warehouse to load up some of the other goods that those cities were trying to grow would need. But it's really going to be more efficient to just run directly to each of the cities, whatever it is we need. Because when you set up a warehouse, you have to have that double infrastructure, because you have to have the trains that run to the warehouse and then the trains that run from the warehouse. So I thought it'd just be easier to just run them straight. So we're going to run weapons directly from Mexico City to Oaxaca. If you'll notice, I set it up to prioritize weapons, and since it's got kind of an infinite supply, it'll always be full of weapons. And always run full. So in other words, don't take off until you got a full load. But that's not a problem either, again, because we got an infinite supply. That was a little overkill. Didn't have to do that, but wanted to make sure that if we're going to run these guys, especially these next ones we're setting up, we're going to run these big long lines to these other cities, that we want a full load of weapons every time you go. So here we are. We're going to build a little bypass so that we can use that same track that runs down to Hawaka, and then we're going to run a little line off of that and run it across these other things and try to link up with this line over here that goes into Belize City. And that'll give us a direct connection to Belize City. So we're trying to take advantage of existing track a little bit. And I think in this game, that's really something you need to think about. Is there's a trade-off there, and you really want to think about how much do I want to reuse track and how much do I want to just have completely new dedicated lines. And of course, I opt in favor of dedicated lines in general, whenever you can. But here's a case where I decided to reuse part of the track, and now we're going to take advantage of our cute little crossing line stuff, and I'm coming at this one at a bad angle, so I can't quite get this one to work. Or there, did I? Yeah, I can't quite get that one to work, so I decided to just build the rest of it and then work on that one. But you know, like I said, we got a new toy. We're going to wear it out. We're going to cross over everything we can find. Now, this is one where it's interesting how the, I think each of us is just going to have to play with this functionality until we get it down. How that worked to come off that merger there to give us that automatic stuff. And here's an example of how, if you want to have the double cross, so to speak, the two lines going across, you can't put them too close to one another. There, now that works. But you'll notice there's a gap there. I can't run it straight across nice and clean the way I'd like to. They have to diverge a little bit. I said earlier, it's sort of like the way you have to deal with bridges. I'm sure you've heard me cursing bridges before in this game. And that's kind of the deal. You have to kind of deal with it like a bridge and give it a gap to get the double cross. So now I did it once, and now I'm going to see if I can do it again. And this one was kind of tricky to get it to work. And see, I think it's just too close there, too close. I finally decided it's not worth the fuss. So I cut it off and made it more like a passing lane, and we'll have a single line of track there that goes across. And this was a poor design, shame on me. Notice it's coming in right there where those trains are lining up to get into a station. It's just too close. I did that earlier on that cattle ranch up near Campeche as well, if you can picture that. But this was just too close to that station. But I kind of, quote, fixed it, unquote, by changing that signal and making the first stop before the intersection. So trains that are waiting to queue up to load in that station will actually stop prior to that intersection, and that way the trains that need to cross can go on across. So all this will work. It's just I think it's a poor design to come in that close to the end of a station. That was I just didn't realize I was doing it at the time. And now, when I first did it, In fact, you know, obviously we're just playing with this functionality because you could go around all this stuff just about as easily and not have any intersections. But, you know, if you got a new toy, you got to play with it. And here we go. We never stop, and we're going to do, and this is cool. We're going to do both a flat across the intersection like this and a merge in at one time, and see how that goes. But here we go. We're going to set, now we've got a clean track all the way from Mexico City to Belize City. We're going to prioritize weapons, say, tell it to run full. And here's another one of those robberies. This one I can't pay for. I don't have enough money. Don't care. And then we'll set that thing, and we're going to go ahead and copy it twice, and that's going to give us 24 guns to take down there. Our goal's 20, so as soon as those 24, those 3 trains get down there, we will have hit another goal, which is Belize City. We've already done this for Oaxaca, so that's 2 of our 4 down. Now we've got to figure out a way to get all the way from Mexico City to Campeche and to Merida. Now we've got this line that runs from Merida to Belize City. Down here, we're probably better to say it, Belize City to Merida, which is the one we're and what we're going to do is loop off and run a little bypass that goes from this line here that is going into Belize City from T-Town. We're going to run a little bypass that goes from that line over to the line that goes to Merida without going through the city itself. And this is the kind of stuff that we could have done this prior to 1.4, but it's much easier after 1.4. It's much easier to do all this stuff. And here we can, you know, yet again have our little flat crossing, but also have our line running and intersecting over here. And again, we can treat this like 2 passing lanes kind of coming together on that tiny bit of track. And that when you see that red and brown, that means you got something that's wrong, something that couldn't possibly happen. And what it is that, well, you'll see it in a minute. We'll fix this in a minute. Everything looks okay there. You've got the track running in the right directions. But the problem is that over here, we haven't built the other side yet. So you've got this only connecting into one line, which can only go in one direction. So it's saying that, hey, I'm being pulled into a line that can only go in one direction, and I don't have any way to cut that off. So what we're going to do here now is build a merge that goes all the way across to the other side, and then use our merge tool to build the other side coming back, and then we'll tie it off up here at the end again like a passing lane coming into a single lane. And now if you'll notice when we go back to signals, see how everything's cool. And the reason being now that it's possible to go in both directions. Before, we were merging into that right-hand lane only, their top lane as we're looking at it, and everything was being pulled from our right to left as we're looking at it, and that meant that there wasn't any way to go back on the other track. But now, because we've got the proper one where we're connecting into both lanes using our merge tool, now we've got a legitimate junction that works, and trains can move both directions. So we're just double checking it to make sure everything is cool, and then we will fire off some trains to go into Merida from Mexico City. So by using our new functionality, building this little bypass here and just connecting up with some existing lines, it's surprisingly easy to run these guns, or weapons rather, excuse me, all the way practically across the map down to Merida. And again, we'll fire off 3 of them. That gives us 24 weapons, and that will close out the task. And we can leave the line running because it just becomes now a line that will carry always carry weapons down and whatever these cities have to offer going back to Mexico City, be it passengers, mail, or goods, and we can make money on it even though it is a very long line. Now we're trying to think about how to get to Campeche, and we decide to do it by using our merge tool to build a merger to kind of cut off and go from the T-Town to Belize line over to the Belize to Campeche line, if you can visualize that. So again, we're just going to build a little merge here. And I'm still playing with this and learning what's the best way to do it. Do you grab the outside? Like if something like this, do you grab outside, inside, outside? It's a little hard for me to figure out. And I think what I ended up doing most of the time was grabbing one of the inside ones to make it look like it was just a regular line coming off, like here, and then going, I think I'll go to the outside over there. Yeah, and then that gives us our cone and pull it back, so that starts us back on our line to merge. And then we'll come down here and actually delete part of the track we originally built and then turn it back into, so here we're going to delete part of the track and turn it back into a regular merger with the outside line, and then we'll use the cone to go back in the other direction. And it's interesting with the cones, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but you can't just drag it and connect. You got to drag it a little ways and accept it, and then usually you have to then build the rest of the connection to the track like that. So when you have an existing piece of track. Now, once we get better at doing this, and I'm saying we because we all need to practice this, I assume, but probably you guys have got it down, but should be able to just grab this, go, click, click, be done. But I don't quite have the mechanics down yet, so a little more practice is needed. But at least we're able to get it. Now we've got this nice little swing around here that can take us into Campeche, and by doing that, we will be able to set up a line that goes all the way from Mexico City to Campeche, but no, it won't quite. And why? Because the line that we connected to is actually going to the cattle. It's not actually going to Campeche, so we still got a little work to do. Thought I had it, but it didn't quite. So if we want that line to take us into Campeche, we've got to connect it up in a way to get around that cattle ranch, or through the cattle ranch. That would work as well. And it's looking like I chose through. And yes, I did. So now I think this is it. I think we can go, yep, now we're able to go all the way Mexico City to Campeche. So we'll do our same thing, 3 fully loaded trains of munitions headed for Campeche to close out that task. And the other reason I'm working on this right now, you know, you might be tempted to say, well, you need to grow these cities. Go down there and grow the cities. Well, if you notice, they are growing, just not fast enough. This one is not, but some of them are growing. And, by the way, the munitions, the guns, weapons, that's what they are. The weapons are part of what they need to grow. So why not send them down there, kill off that upcoming task, and help provide these cities with something they need as part of their demand satisfaction? Because if you look at their demand, they really do have a demand for weapons. So that's going to help them grow and kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. So now we're just looking at what can I send to these places to help them grow? And one of the things we need is coffee. Coffee is a real fundamental in the Mexico map. It's as I said before, it's the corn of the Mexico map. So it's one of the 6 early fundamentals you need to get into a city. So we're going to try to run coffee up here. I'm going to hook it up into this line that we've set up that goes over to all 3 of those cities down there. And this should allow us to send coffee to any of those cities that we want. Now, all this kind of being real smart right here is also part of not so great. And here's why. We're now starting to put more and more stuff on the same lines. Now, someone would say, oh, but that's good, efficient design. It kind of is, but I would argue it also kind of isn't, because we're now starting to run multiple things down these lines, and they're going to be coming in to the stations at the same place. See, there's only one spot that these guys can hit. So that coffee going to Campeche, there's only one spot that it can hit to make a delivery. And it's going to line up with the cattle and with those munitions coming in and anything else we might throw on there. And it's going to start getting too crowded. Now, that's in Campeche. And, not to look ahead, I try not to talk ahead, but ahead, we're going to see, when there's, Oaxaca's already got their 20 guns. That's good. And Merida is growing. That just means it's at the 20,000 mark. It's a really tiny place, and it's got to go to 60,000, so it's the hardest one. So now we're starting to get cotton, so we're going to expand that weaving factory to make it a larger portion of the overall demand. In other words, if our weaving factory needs more cotton, the cotton satisfies a larger portion of the demand in the city of Merida, and that will help it grow. Not to mention we can sell the cloth that we make in our other cities. So now we have set up, we're starting to do the growth of the 4 cities. We really have solved the next problem, the weapons to the cities. We've already got that basically done, because it's just a matter of time now for those trains to get down there with their loads, and those tasks will close fairly quickly. The harder one is to just flat out grow the cities, because they're not in a beautiful spot to grow. And, if we had everything, this would be super easy if there was a wheat farm. If you had a wheat farm right down there where we're looking, and you could make Merida into a brewery rather than that textiles, then you could have meat beer down there, and it would be super easy to grow those cities. As it is not super easy. It's actually fairly difficult. But I think we'll manage. So I think this would be a good place to cut this one off. We haven't seen the end results, but we've basically skipped one and gotten our weapons thing done, and through some semi-clever use of all of our new track laying techniques. And we've got a good start on growing those cities, but we've got a long way to go on getting that done. So let's stop right here, and we'll pick it up in part 4 and we'll continue to work on growing those cities. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.